I'm pretty sure many of us have heard of ghost stories revolving around Mandai. I hope I am pronouncing it right. But there are very few who share stories about the sighting at the Singapore Zoo and the night safari. This incident happened to myself back in 2010 or 2009, if I remember correctly. Back then, Night Safari had a Halloween special, and in my opinion, it is way scarier than the Halloween Horror Nights at USS. We had many decorations, from hanging haunted dolls, Chinese zombies, realistic tombstones, and many more. The main theme was Spooky Tales of Asia, or something along those lines. I was working there back then, and there was many ghostly encounters that was reported to us as a staff. The reason I say reported is because many of the guests do not know that they actually encountered something. Here are some stories, or some of the scariest stories that I have seen or heard. Firstly, my personal encounter with the supposedly realistic Pontianak. Back then, I was one of the staff roaming around the compound near this boardwalk. I forgot what is called, but it was something along those lines. When I was there, I frequently received this compliment that the decorations on the trees look realistic. Initially, I just smiled and nodded to thank them for the compliments, but suddenly I thought to myself, what is this decoration that so many people attracted to? After 4 or 5 compliments, I was approached by this couple. I'm not sure whether they are Japanese or Korean. They said to me in English, "The flying lady is very good." That's when I realized that it is not any decoration. There was no flying lady involved at all. And in my mind, I immediately thought of the Pontianak. I was not really scared since there were a lot of people, but I definitely had the chills being in that area. The second story happened to one of my friends who was working at the train attraction. If I'm not wrong, it's called Train of Horror during the Halloween event. What she experienced was similar to me, but it's way scarier. These two are by far the scariest ghosts we have seen on this ride. She thought herself, these two, she was alone there the whole time. And at first, she believed that the tourists were playing a trick on her. Slowly, she realized that some of the tourists were recording something else each time they passed her zone. Instead of pointing the camera to her, they were pointing it to the area behind her. The last story is a famous one, but I just thought of it sharing it, just one of the more creepy ones. No one told me this story specifically, but I managed to eavesdrop on the conversation between the other staff. They were making jokes about how some of the scare actors were really into their role, and one of them decided to sit one. They were making joke about how some of the scare actors were really into their role, and one of them even decided to sit on the top of the tram. However, none of them did it. The drivers insisted that they clearly saw someone sitting, but no one admitted to it, or maybe there was actually no one there. I have more stories that I have heard related to paranormal sighting in the zoo and the night safari, but I will save it for the next time. Back in June 2014, there were images of this doll known as Who Gang doll that was circulating around the internet, mostly on Reddit and Twitter. You could search the image of the doll on Google, as I could not place it in a blog due to copyright issues. It was found in a bad condition and lying on a tree with Bismillah, which translates to "in the name of Allah" in Arabic, written on cloth that covers its eyes. The cloth with that writing was believed to trap whatever jinn or evil entity in the doll. Manny was warned against removing the blindfold, but a few days later, the doll was missing and believed to have been taken by someone else. There were many speculations on the doll. The doll was said to be moving around in the house on its own when the owner wasn't around, and sometimes a female voice could be heard from the doll when it's left alone in the room. Some also say it's a Malay female voice. When they enter the room, the head of the doll will be facing a different direction as well. They believe that the only way of getting rid of the doll was to place it far, far away from home, with cloth covering its eyes. On the same day, there was a reported murder case as well as a suicide case, while some say it's just a coincidence and others believed otherwise. While there is no definite evidence to this case, it is quite creepy if you ask me. The features of the doll is the most contributing factor. Sometimes I wonder whether the whole thing was just a setup or a prank, and at the same time, who in their right mind will leave a haunted doll on the side of the road below a tree? Everyone in Asia will be familiar with the term pakong, or what many of us refer to gula gula. What if I told you it does not look like what we expect it to be? We usually associate pakong to a ghost wrapped in white clothes and jumping from one place to another, but it's wrong. It's usually covered in filthy clothes with zero hint of whiteness, and it's floating instead of jumping. Back in 2012, if I remember correctly, I had two separate incidents encountering this pakong. The first incident took place during my friend's gathering. There were around 5 of us, and we were chilling in this hut, gossiping, laughing, the typical teenager stuff. It was getting late, and there were not as many as people, but we stayed until the late hours. Nothing supernatural happened until we took the selfie. The first picture we took looks fine and normal, but the second picture, the pakong was in the same frame. At first glance, you might not suspect it as a pakong, as it just looked like a brown spot. But upon closer inspection, we realized there was a slight facial features. And the scariest part was that the pakong was about 8 to 10 meters behind us, floating beside a street lamp. None of us said anything because we did not want to alert the Pogong. I mean, most of us, most of our parents usually remind us not to acknowledge its presence because it is similar to inviting it over. But one of my damn best friend said, "Hey, look, got something here, looks like Pogong." When he said that, there was a quick gush of wind and foul smell. A better way to describe the smell is rotten eggs. Already uneasy, all of us stood up and made our way to the nearby HDB blocks to Lepak. Nobody opened up about that experience and we deleted all of our pictures, even the ones without the Pogong. Luckily, none of us had any disturbance that night. The second incident took place a few months later. I could still remember the Pogong incident vividly, but I still made the decision to go for a night run. I was actually going through a tough time. I really needed some fresh air. I had no intentions to run in Clementi Wurst Park at all, but somehow I ran and appeared to be there. There were a few other joggers, so I wasn't that scared, but there are a few times where I appeared to be alone. Everything was fine until I ran past this playground in the park. The Pogong was playing peekaboo with me. As I ran past, the same looking Pogong peeked out from the back of the pole at the playground area. I sped up and felt like my stamina was back at a full tank as I was making my way out. The Pogong appeared 2 more times, once behind a tree and one more time behind some bushes. I knew my eyes were not playing tricks on me, but luckily I managed to reach home safely. Again, there was no disturbance at home, but I really could not sleep that night. And this is the first time I'm sharing this story. Thankfully, the Pogong does not follow people home, and I wonder if there are other people who have similar stories regarding this Pogong. Now I still live in the West, but I made it a point to never visit that place again. Sometimes, when I really have to drive past that area, I still have the chills and I always feel like someone or someone else is peeking at me. This incident took place a few years back in Bedok area. I do not want to disclose the area, but this incident took place a few years back in Bedok area. I don't want to disclose the area because this incident is probably a one-time thing, and I don't want to attract unnecessary attention. I still live in the same house, but after all these years, the area still feels soft sometimes. When I'm going home in the VRs, there will still be people loitering around my area, but I have always had this feeling of someone following me from the back. But one particular incident proved my assumptions wrong. I was going home around 10 p.m. after my football training in the secondary school. I did not feel anything off at all, but there was fewer people hanging around than usual. Surprisingly, I enjoyed the peace and did not feel scared at all. When I reached home, my void deck around 50 meters away from my lift, this Malay auntie stopped me. She looked normal, hunched back, a tudung covering her head, and had no teeth or dentures. Asked me, "Do you live here in Malay?" I nodded my head and she smiled. "Do you need my company?" she continued. I shook my head and apologized to her. I made an excuse needing to rush home and just left her there. When I left her, I could hear her feet shuffling. I tilted my head a little and saw her walking with tiny steps, tailing me from behind. I continued to take glances and realized that her shuffling pace increased. I did not think twice and ran to the lift and was lucky that day. The lift was on the first floor. I got in, pressed the fourth floor, and I was on my way. When I reached my level, I still heard shuffling sound, and out of curiosity, I looked down the staircase. I saw the same Malay auntie making her way up, and she was already on the second floor. How did she walk that fast? At that point in time, I knew something was off, and I quickly went inside my home. Thankfully, my parents were still awake, and I told them what happened, all the story. They asked me to recite some prayers and forced me to take a shower immediately. When I thought that everything was over, the disturbance continued. When I was about to fall asleep, I heard the same shuffling noise in the corridor outside my room window. I covered my ears and my face, but the fear stayed inside. I covered my ears and my face, but the fear stayed inside. In the end, I slept in my parents' room. Thankfully, after that day, I no longer see that auntie and heard that shuffling noise ever again. Since I still stay here now, I made it a habit to blast my music and brisk walk home from the bus stop every single time without a fail. Anyone from Bedok had any similar experience? This was an amazing collaboration with SG Horrors blog, and he's a really great guy. So thank you for sharing all the great stories. And I am really literally chilled, and I'm a little scared right now. But these are really great stories of Singapore and Asia. I have much more content related to Asia and mostly connected to subcontinent, India and Pakistan. But I'll share those stories as well in this channel, and I'm trying to create multiple series of the content and from multiple countries from around the world. If something happens to you, paranormal, haunted, supernatural, something weird, creepy, you can share it with us. Their email is on the screen and is in the description. Or you can also submit your story in our subreddit. So wherever you want, you can share the story, or you can also send us your audio voice notes of the story so we can refine it and play it on our channel and spread the word. Also, I'm really grateful that you guys are putting great stories out there. I want you to share as much stories as you can, because this channel works on that. And also, this is important that you share a word to the world, because many people experience the same, and they might get the courage to share their stories, and maybe they could have some kind of a guidance if your story has some kind of peace at the ending. Okay, so it's a lot of talk. So see you in the next video. Until then, Allah Hafiz.